What's up, fishes? Welcome back to the channel. This is vlog number 11, and before we get started, I want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to all you fishes out there. Hopefully you guys had a great time with your family, with your friends, or with whoever it is you spent Christmas with. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, then happy holidays to you too, you big goofball. Hopefully you as well had a great time. That being said, guys, I have some bad news. This is gonna be my last vlog. This is it for 2019. Hell yeah, guys. 2020 is just around the corner with new beginnings, new resolutions. And if you have a New Year resolution, go ahead and leave me a comment below letting me know what it is. What is your New Year resolution? And if you don't have a New Year resolution, let me know that you don't have a New Year resolution. Anybody who goes on and comments is gonna go ahead and get the chance to win a freaking hat. Look at that. I've made some hats. We are moving up in this world. Hell freaking yeah. I also have some shirts left over from the previous giveaway that weren't claimed. I'll go ahead and give some of those away as well. Like I said, all you gotta do is just comment below letting me know your New Year resolution. As far as my New Year resolution, I'm gonna go ahead and jump on that healthy train, guys. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I eat straight out of the garbage. That's gonna change. I'm gonna eat healthier. I'm gonna eat more of those green things. What are they called? Vegetables? I don't know if you've heard of them, but I'm gonna go ahead and give that a try. On top of that, I'm gonna go ahead and try to upload some more videos for you guys. I know I've only been uploading like once a month, once every month and a half or something, and well, I'm gonna try my best, keyword here, try my very, very best to upload at least one video every 2 weeks. I know it's a long shot, but that's what New Year's resolutions are all about. Put yourself to the challenge, put yourself to the test. And well, without further ado, let's get into our poker. Now this tournament is about 20 miles away from home, and translated into LA traffic, that's about a day-and-a-half drive. I don't mind driving for a whole day and a half to get to this tournament because this tournament is freaking awesome. It's been my home for the last 4 months, and it's just a great tournament. It's $50 buy-in, which every single dollar of this buy-in goes into the pot, and they pay about 4 to 5 places depending on how much money's in there. It's 3 tables every single Friday with 10 people on each table, and they provide dealers, which I am proud to say that I've been promoted to one of the dealers, which is awesome. I enjoy it, I love it, and well, let's get started. So we get this game started and the blinds are 25-50. We're barely in the first rotation and I look down at 4-3. This isn't just 4-3, guys, this is 4-3 suited. I'm in the cutoff position and everybody decides to fold, and it comes back around to me and I just cannot resist. I can't stop myself. I can't help myself. I go on and I put in a bet of 600. 600 might not seem like a lot to you fishes, but that's a 12x raise. And if you don't think a 12x raise pre-flop is a lot, then I guess you don't think a 12x pre-flop raise is a lot. Anyways, our opponent on the small blind calls, our opponent on the big blind calls, and we're 3 ways to a flop. The flop is 4-8-5 with 2 spades. We go ahead and flop bottom pair with a monster kicker, and both the small blind and the big blind check. It comes back around to me and there's no checking. I go ahead and fire off a bet of 600, which our opponent in the small blind and the big blind both call, and we are 3 ways to a turn. The turn is a jack, and after both our opponents check, I go ahead and fire off a bet of 1,000. 1,000, hopefully our opponents fold, and thankfully, our opponents did fold. They both folded. We didn't even get to showdown, which is great. I pick up a monster pot of 3,600. Now, I know that might not seem very monster-ish, but that's a little bit over 70 big blinds. 70 big blinds. We're now chip leaders. We're feeling great. We're feeling frisky. And we're feeling freaking awesome. Hell yeah. Now this next hand has to be one of my favorite hands of the night. I play it against one of my best friends. His name is Z, and Z's been eager to get on the vlog, but we just haven't played any hands together worthy enough to make it on the vlog until now. Anyways, that being said, the blinds are now 100, 200, and our opponent in the cutoff is the only one who calls. I look down at ace-5 offsuit on the button and I bump it up to 600. Our opponent in the small blind folds and our opponent on the big blind calls, which is Z. He puts the remainder 400 and we are now 3 ways to a flop. The flop is 3-8-4 with 2 clubs on board. Z goes on and he checks, and our opponent in the cutoff checks, and I fire a continuation bet of 1,000. Z calls the 1,000, and our opponent on the cutoff decides to let it go, and we are now heads up to see a turn. The turn is a 6, and Z checks one more time. I gave up on this pot. I'm pretty sure I'm beat. I go ahead and I check back, and we go on to see a free river. The river's a 4, and this is where Z decides to get a little froggy. He fires off a bet of 4,000. He makes it a pot-sized bet, and this is where I go into the tank. I'm thinking, and then this is what he says.
Before you make the call, or fold, or raise, can we just agree that this hand makes it onto the vlog?
Something about the way he says this tickles my pickle in a way that I don't like my pickle to be tickled. There's red flags, there's sirens going off, and I think I'm good with my ace high. Even though it's going to take me 4,000 chips to find out, I go with my gut instinct. I go out and make the call. He turns over a busted flush, and I turn over my hand, and in a very, very gay way, I say, ace high, motherfucker. I win a pot of about 12,000 chips, and well, congratulations to my buddy Z, who finally made it onto the vlog. Anyways, we are chip leaders and we're feeling great. We're sitting now on about 30,000 chips. We are on under the gun position and we look down at cowboys. Pocket kings, we go ahead and bump it up to 2,000. Our opponent in the under the gun +1 decides to go all in. He goes all in, and I've seen him do this move with shitty hands, so there's no reason for me to believe I'm in trouble. Our opponent in the big blind is thinking about it, and while he's thinking about it, I flash my kings to my opponent that just went all in, so he can see what a bad move he just did. What a stupid time to go all in. Of course I make the call, and of course he shows me pocket aces. Of course I stay calm on the outside, but on the inside I'm like,
well, this is just perfect. Mother,
I give my camera to Mr. Pocket Aces over here so he can record the run out, and he gets fired immediately after failing to do his only one job. Anyways, I assure you I didn't flop a king. The turn didn't help, and neither did the river. And for all you dumb people out there, let me simplify this for you. Aces are better than kings. Anyways, I lose 50% of my stack, and I'm not feeling so great. Blinds are still 200, 400, and our opponent under the gun calls. Our opponent in middle position calls. Our opponent on the button calls, and it comes back around to me, and I go ahead and make the call as well. But our opponent in the big blind decides to put 1,000 more into the pot. Our opponent under the gun calls, middle position calls, the button calls, and I also call in the small blind, and we are 5 ways to a flop. The flop is ace 3-7, all of them of hearts. Now the only heart that I have is the one beating inside my chest, and I go ahead and I check. Our opponent on the big blind decides to check back, which is pretty weird to me because he's the original aggressor, and he didn't even put in a C-bet. Our opponent in the under the gun, as well as our opponent in middle, as well as our opponent on the button, everybody checks. And with everybody checking, I'm fairly confident that nobody flopped a flush. Nobody flopped a flush because it got checked around, and if somebody did flop a flush and they're trying to trap, I mean, unless you have the nut flush, that's a good idea, but if you have low cards, I mean, that's stupid. If you check and you give a free card and a heart comes on the turn, you're gonna be in trouble. Anyway, there's no heart on the turn. It's a 10 of clubs, and at this point, I'm fairly confident that my top pair with my monster kicker is good. I go ahead and I fire 1,700, and our opponent in the big blind calls. Our opponent under the gun folds. This gentleman over here in middle position makes the call. The button folds, and we are 3 ways to a river. The river's an offsuit king. I'm glad there's not 4 hearts on board, and I bet 2,000. Our opponent in the big blind decides to fold, and this gentleman over here again, he's contemplating for a few extra seconds before he makes the call, and he turns over Queen Jack. He turns over Queen Jack for a runner straight, And oh man, I really wish he would have just hit his heart. I think runner hurts just a little bit more. And well, we go ahead and we lose 5,000 chips. We're back to square one. We're back to starting stack, and it's time to play more like a donkey. Let's get some all-ins. Blinds are still 200, 400, and I'm sitting on 10,000 chips. 10,000 chips, that's about starting stack. And I look down at not one, but two juicy aces. Pocket aces, and our opponent under the gun decides to call the 400. Everybody else folds except for our opponent on the button. Our opponent on the button decides to raise it to 1,200, and it comes back around to me, and I re-raise it to 4,000. Everybody else gets out of the way, and now we're heads up to see a flop. The flop is deuce 5 queen, and I go on and set the trap. I check it to my opponent, who has about 6,000 chips left, and she falls for it. She goes on and she shoves. Of course, I go on and I call, and I show her the bad news. I show her my pocket aces, and she turns over king queen. She flopped top pair with the king kicker, and unfortunately for her, she didn't improve on the turn, and she didn't improve on the river. We go ahead and we double up, and we scoop up a massive pot just in time before the blinds go up. Hell freaking yeah. Blinds are now 400, 800, and everybody on the table decides to fold, and it's now action on the small blind. The small blind looks at his hand and decides they're good enough to put the remainder 400, which I'm glad he didn't raise, because I look down at 7-3 offsuit on the big blind. I go on and I check it, and we go heads up to a flop. The flop is 6-7-3. Our big blind special pays off. We flop 2 pair, and after our opponent checks to us, we fire off a bet of 1,500. 1,500 into a pot of 1,600. That's a hefty ass bet. Our opponent, though, he's not buying what we're selling, and we go heads up to see a turn. The turn is a 9, and our opponent checks again. We go on and we fire 1,000. 1,000 into a pot of 4,500, which is a pretty low bet considering the previous street I made it a pot size bet, and this time I'm betting less than a third. I think our opponent goes on and takes this as weakness, and he decides to shove. He shoves for a little bit over 9,000 chips. And of course I make the call. He hit a 9 on the turn and decided to shove. He bricks out on the river, and we pick up a pot of almost 15,000 chips. Blinds are still 400, 800, and we look down at pocket 9s in the under the gun. We go on and we fire off a bet of 3,500, which our opponent to our immediate left decides to call. Everybody else decides to get out of the way except our opponent on the big blind, who makes the call, and we are 3 ways to a flop. The flop is 6-king-3. Our opponent on the big blind checks. I go ahead and I check because there's a stupid king out there. And our opponent to my left also checks, and we go on to see a free turn. Now, if you guys think that I'm going to go ahead and drill a 9 on the turn, you guys are freaking right. There's a 9 on the turn. And if you guys think that I'm going to get even luckier and have my opponent lead out, and you guys are freaking right again, man, you guys are on a right roll. Our opponent leads out for 5,000. Of course I make the call. I don't raise because there's not too many cards on the river that I'm going to be scared of. I just flat. Our opponent to my left folds, and we're heads up to see a free river. The river's a deuce. Our opponent shoves for another 6 grand, and of course we make the call. We show him the bad news. Even worse news when he shows me king 6. He goes on and he flops 2 pair, and he was trying to trap, and he just got really unlucky. This hand, though, it breaks the table. We're off to the final table now, where first place is going to get over 600 bucks. Let's keep it rolling. We're at the final table playing 10-handed now, where 5 players are going to get paid off. I started this table with about 60,000 chips, which was about 50 big blinds. But after folding for a whole half an hour, not playing any hands and losing blinds, I'm now down to 25 big blinds. I have a starting stack of 50,000, and it's time to start making some moves. I go on and I look down at king 8 suited on the button, and I go ahead and I bump it up to 8,000. The big blind calls, the cutoff calls, and we're 3 ways to a flop. The flop is ace 7 deuce. Both of my opponents check, and I go ahead and I fire a pretty standard continuation bet of 12,000. Our opponent on the big blind takes a few seconds before he makes the call. Our opponent on the cutoff folds, and we're heads up to see a turn. The turn is a king. My opponent checks, and I'm not too sure if he's trying to trap me. There's still an ace out there. I'm pretty scared of it. He called a big pre-flop raise, and he called a pretty big continuation bet. So I'm not feeling too confident. I go on and I check back, and we go on to see a free river. The river's a 9, and our opponent checks one last time. It takes every ounce of fish juice in me not to shove all in. I only have about 30,000 chips left, and my opponent checked back to me twice. I just can't put him on a hand. I don't think he has an ace, maybe a pocket pair, but I don't know. I go on and I check back just for safety measures, I guess, and it was a good check. He turns over King Jack. I'm not sure what he called the flop with. I mean, it's a half-size bet on the flop, and he called with King High. He must have had a really good read on me. But anyways, I only have 30,000 chips left, and we're not feeling so great. A few hands later, we go ahead and we get dealt pocket kings in the low jack. Hell freaking yeah, we go ahead and we get cowboys, and we bump it up to 16,000. That leaves me with about 15,000 behind, and everybody's been folding to a shove, and I didn't want to shove because if I get one caller, they're going to be priced in when I go all in on the flop. Fortunately though, that doesn't happen. Our opponent on the hijack, he decides to go all in for a little bit over 20,000. Our opponent on the cutoff, he decides to call the 20,000. And then our opponent on the small blind, he gets froggy and decides to go all in. He goes all in for a little bit over 30,000, which puts me all in. Of course I make the call, and at this point, I'm freaking 100% sure that I'm gonna win this tournament. So I just lost the tournament. Pocket kings, man. The guy to my left had pocket queens. He goes on and he shoves. The guy next to him, he goes on and he calls. The guy after him shoves for like 1,000,000 chips. I'm like, hell yeah, I got him right where I want him, right? I go on and I make the call for 1,000,000 chips. The remainder of my chips, it was me, pocket kings, versus the guy next to me who had pocket queens. The guy after that had pocket aces. And the guy after that, the one with 1,000,000 chips, he shoved for, with like ace 10 of diamonds, I believe it was. And well, that's it, we're out. We played our best. And yeah, there's nothing I can do there. It's a cooler situation, but still, it doesn't feel good when you think you're gonna win and bam, you don't win. But that's poker. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit like. And I'll catch you guys later.
Okay.
All in for less. Call. You're all in.
Okay.
Oh, that was a quick call.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh,
Ken, what do you
all
got?
hands, all hands.
Oh, shit.
Pack a king, pack a queen. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Wow, it's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
All right. Do you cover Mike? You get these guys money.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't over because if it would have been a king.